Halbert and see his...
Shanan Halbert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do love a good debate from my friend, my mate over there, Cameron Brewer. You know, the thing I like about him is he plays it straight. You know where you stand. But there was one of the most terrible speeches that I've heard from him. Because, Madam Speaker, he talked about the National Party being the party of workers. In fact, I'll tell you what they're a party of, Madam Speaker. They're a party of cuts. They're a party of chaos. They're a party of broken promises. They're a party that is out of touch, just like the Prime Minister. They're a party of tobacco. And just for Cameron Brewer and Dan Bidwar, they're a party that is closing down the North Shore Women's Centre on the shore. How shameful. Mr. Speaker, it's my privilege. It was my privilege to have delivered a lot of things to the North Shore, unlike those two. Schools, police numbers, you name it. They haven't done anything yet. But Mr. Speaker, tonight it's my privilege to be able to talk about this particular piece of legislation, and I love that I've racked them up, because they know, Mr. Speaker, that they have delivered nothing. They have delivered absolutely nothing to Auckland's North Shore. Just like the Minister of Auckland, they're sold out on Auckland, and they're sold out on our communities. Mr. Speaker, now that they've quieted them down, can I acknowledge my colleague, and she hasn't had 6 years in this place, but my colleague, class of 2020, Camilla Bellichin, a good North Coast and North Shore resident herself. There are some good work that she does, but can I acknowledge you, Camilla, and the work that you've put into this particular bill, and also my brother, Ibrahim Omer, for the work that he has done in bringing this bill into the House and carving this particular pathway. I look back, Mr. Speaker, to his maiden speech and his commitment to this House, and absolutely his commitment to workers, and that's what the Labour Party stands for. Mr. Speaker, I just don't understand how it is that the National Party doesn't believe that not paying their employees shouldn't be a criminal offence. How is it that tonight they can vote against this particular bill that sets up a higher threshold when our most vulnerable workers are ripped off by their employers? I remember myself, and I like to think that many people in this House have had a vulnerable moment in employment, perhaps when we were teenagers, perhaps when, like me in hospitality, you had a run-in with the boss and they threatened not to pay you. Well, in fact, Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation means that you do have to be paid. Mr. Speaker, this bill amends the Crimes Act to clarify that intentionally not paying an employee their wages is, in fact, theft. The law as it stands does not address this, and wage theft is mainly following up through the civil courts rather than enforcement through the police. Mr. Speaker, I like to think that around this House and in many cases today, we have been able to support members' bills on Members' Day because they are particularly good kaupapa. And this is another one that comes before this House, and it's a test on who supports workers, who supports our kaimahi, our most vulnerable workers, to not only be paid what they're worth, but to be looked after and recognised under our workforce legislation. Mr. Speaker, I'm calling on both the ACT Party, the National Party and New Zealand First tonight to support this bill, and I commend this bill to the House.
Very tame in comparison, and was there any misleading stuff in that statement from Shanan Halbert?
I mean, he asked this very simple question, right? How is it that the employees stealing from their employers stealing from their employees is not a crime? It's a very simple logic question, right? So no, there's nothing misleading in his speech.
Interesting, because in the court of law, in civil and criminal matters, the judge listens to both sides of the story, isn't it? I mean, you have your say, even if it's frivolous or it's true. The point then would be there also should be culpability for the employers. So in a way, although I'm on the center and on the right, but I have to say that this bill has some credence because it's ethical, because you're fighting because all of us, I was an employer, but I was also an employee before. Yeah, so you can empathize with those who, you started from scratch. I was working in, I think in Melbourne as a uni student, 18 years old, wearing I was a blue collar worker. All the Toyota hubcaps, I'm the one who crushed it, all the rejects and grind it. And there was in La Trobe Uni running up 30 minutes, they got to be in time for the last bus back to uni. So, you start from somewhere, right? So there's a need to empathize with those who are workers, because we are or used to be workers, And I think for employers, sometimes they forget where they started. Even as a real estate agent,
And actually, how many of them actually go on the front line to actually sit there and do that? Like, a good example is the physio firm I go to get physio at KCP. Yuri Hinson, the owner, is also on the front line with his staff, not sitting in some big swanky office and playing golf. He actually tips in more hours into the business per week than most of his employees. But, you know, he's still in touch with the front line. You know, and he has a strong retention rate of staff. Like, it's a very low turnover compared to other practices in the industry. And that's the sort of thing, you know, how many people sit there and do it. Like, when I'm out sitting there selling coffee and that, if remember Wings of Wairarapa, you know, I'm the one on the front line making all those coffees. Not an employee getting paid $25 an hour. I'm the one behind that coffee machine doing the coffees. You know, I leave the $25 an hour employee to fill up the slushing machine and take the cash. Because, you know, I do that, and, you know, it's quite interesting, you know, because even that, you know, I own my own business, I'm still that frontline person, so I still have the empathy of a worker. But many who have, say, you know, progressed from, say, being frontline worker to management to board of directors to on the golf course have kind of lost that same approach to their frontline worker. And I mean, you know, it's like me when it comes to getting like my car fixed. I go to owner operators where the owner is on the floor, not just the worker, the owner. You know?
Not everybody was born like a billionaire's son, like Trump. Trump is a billionaire's son. He's born with a silver spoon, so you can see you can see the, you know, the apprentice, sack, you know, because he has been like shaped, you know, sociologically conditioned to not think about, hey, this worker, you know, what is he going through?
I also think that there are a lot of these MPs who are speaking against this bill. I mean, if they're not quite sure whether, I mean, the wage theft is a big problem or not. I mean, they are electorate MPs, most of them, I suspect, and all they could have done is just maybe like put out like a, you know, like a survey to their, like, hey, have you ever like experienced any, you know, wage thefts? You know, that could have, you know, answered their questions if they are not really they are not sure about these things. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're asking here is just consistency really in our Crimes Act. When it comes to employers stealing from employees, it's a crime. It's a crime. When employees stealing from employer, it's a crime. If it's the other way around, it's a civil matter. You know, it's very inconsistent. So we're just really looking for consistency here. Make it the same. And you know, like whether employee or employer stealing from each other, it should be criminal.
Yeah, and
you know, there shouldn't be any exception. There shouldn't be any inconsistency.
Yeah, and thank you, Stacey, for that comment on there. You are totally right. And as Eric does know, when it comes to, like, you know, setting up It's in the Ballot shows, I'm not just the pretty person behind the desk, but I'm also probably on the floor making sure that everything's all working before the show actually runs, and we'll spend probably 2 to 3 hours setting up, saying the order of that sort of thing, and making sure that all the right gear works in the right places. So, yeah, and that's an example from It's in the Ballot. If you watch me do with the coffee cart, same sort of thing. I make sure that things work, and there was, you know, and it's making sure the equipment works in that. If I'm going to go to a venue where I'm getting someone else's power, I make sure that they've got the right power points. Anyone who says to me, trust me, it will work, or I'll just plug it into a 10 amp plug, you're setting up a problem for me. So, you know, that's something that's there. And the thing is, you know, I don't tend to get the problems because I do my homework in advance. So let's get to the chair.